Hello and welcome to Every Persona Explained, where we take a look at the origin and representation of every persona. And today, we're taking a look at Captain Kidd. When the topic of pirates comes up, people usually talk about Blackbeard, Henry Morgan, or Jack Rackham. No, not that one. And occasionally, Captain William Kidd. And every time someone does, Captain Kidd's ghost probably gets very upset. William Kidd was born in Scotland in 1645. Maybe 1654. I saw a couple sources that say that, but I don't know if it was just a mix-up of numbers. While Kidd's early life is somewhat unclear, he became a sailor fairly young. Sometime in the 1680s, Kidd moved across the sea to New York, where he gained renown as a privateer and pirate hunter. Now, before we continue, let's clarify the difference between pirate and privateer. A privateer is a sailor, group of sailors, or non-governmentally owned ship that is contracted by the government or a government official to go out into the ocean, find enemy vessels, usually enemy commercial vessels, steal all their stuff, and bring it back to the contractor, but keeping a portion of it for themselves. They were given a letter of marque and only supposed to attack ships of certain nations. A pirate, on the other hand, was a sailor, group of sailors, or non-governmentally owned ship that went out into the ocean, found other vessels, regardless of nationality, still usually commercial vessels, steal all of their stuff, and keep it for themselves. So, really, the difference between them is a slight moral alignment and paperwork. Now, Captain Kidd wasn't just sailing around legally stealing things. During his time in New York, he also managed to befriend some government officials, including some colonial governors, married a young, wealthy, rich widow named Sarah Bradley Cox, and become a landowner. Aside from that one time his dad died at sea when William was young, his life was going pretty well. So let's watch it fall apart. Between 1688 and 1697, there was a conflict in Europe called the 9 Years' War, which has to be one of the worst names for a war in the history of names. Fortunately, it's also known as the War of the Grand Alliance, which is much better. On one side of the war was France, and on the other side was England, and a bunch of other nations that are not relevant to this video. The English contracted Kidd to go hunt pirates in the Red Sea and Indian Ocean. They gave him a new ship, the Adventure, or Adventure Galley, and a skilled crew to complete this mission with. And almost immediately, things started going wrong. He lost a lot of his crew. I haven't found the exact reason why, but he had to hire a new crew. The new crew was not a group of crack British sailors, but mostly ex-pirates and smugglers. As you can imagine, this is an issue. The conflict in objectives between the captain and crew, along with the grand total of 0 ships they were able to take on their way east, led to conflicts aboard the ship. Including the one time where Kidd accidentally killed one of his own men. On top of all this, disease did the thing that disease does and killed a bunch of his crew. Eventually, Kidd got desperate. Kidd and his crew happened upon a ship called the Quetta
Merchant.
That, and decided to take it. In spite of the fact that he had a diminished crew and a smaller ship, Kidd was able to successfully take the Merchant, and renamed it the Adventure Prize. This prize, however, was a problem. I just can't figure out what the problem was. So basically every source I found says there was a different reason for the ship being a problem. One said it was actually an English East India Company ship. Another claimed that it was just carrying English East India Company cargo. Either of which would be big problems considering who his bosses were. The story that makes the most sense to me was that it was a non-French ship, but it was sailing under French protection. And Kidd thought that made a fair game. As it turns out, it did not. Kidd was branded a pirate, which he didn't like, so he decided to go home and try to straighten things out. When he eventually got back to New York, however, the governor had him arrested and sent back to England to be tried. In the almost 2 years since Kidd left England, the dominant political party changed, and unfortunately for Kidd, all of his backers were part of the party that fell out of power, and none of them were able to come to his defense. Amazingly, though, we have an account of the trial. The book, The Arraignment, Trial, and Condemnation of Captain William Kidd, is a record of the trial that you can buy and read for yourself. Or just read the whole thing on the U.S. Library of Congress's website, for free. It does seem to me that Kid might have been used as a tool to discredit his backers and push them further out of power. Fortunately, governments have learned from this shameful act and don't do bad things just to further their power anymore. Anyways, Kid was convicted of piracy and also the murder of the one crewman he killed and sentenced to hang. He was actually hung twice. The first time they tried, the rope snaps, presumably because life decided Kid's day wasn't bad enough. And that's Captain William Kidd, privateer, one-time murderer, and partial inspiration for both Treasure Island and Edgar Allan Poe's Gold Bug. So how's his in-game representation? His in-game appearance is really good for a pirate. Terrifying ship, piratey clothes, eye patch, and while the standard skull and crossbones are absent, the crossed swords under his skull head references it well enough. On that subject, the skull and crossbones as a symbol for death goes back thousands of years and spans the globe. While we don't 100% know how the symbol became associated with pirates, it is stated in the 1742 book, A General History of the Robberies and Murders of the Most Notorious Pirates, that name's too long, that a pirate by the name of Bartholomew Roberts, or Black Bart Roberts, had a flag with a skeleton on it, and probably due to Roberts' wild success, other pirates copied it. Or at least tried to. Stitching an entire skeleton onto a flag is difficult. Skull and crossbones is much easier. But the author's credibility is in question, so take that with a grain of salt. So I'd say, pretty good representation for a pirate. Here's the thing though. For most of his career, Kidd wasn't a pirate. Now, the line between pirate and privateer is pretty blurry, and I'm not going to try and say the man was a saint. But from what I read, Kidd really wasn't trying to be a pirate. So, legendary pirate Captain Kidd, good representation. Actual privateer and pirate hunter Captain Kidd, not so much. Captain Kidd is categorized in the Chariot Arcana, which... Wait, did I really do 2 chariots back to back? Good job. Anyways, the Upright Chariot Arcana represents things like willpower and determination, which fits well with both the legendary pirate and the more grounded privateer versions. When reversed, however, it represents a lack of control or direction. Just like last time, it doesn't fit really well with Kidd, but it does fit well with his user, Ryuji. It's almost like this was planned or something. So Kidd doesn't have any gun moves. He's a pirate, with a gun for a hand, with no gun moves. That doesn't make any sense. What he does have is a lot of physical moves, like Rampage and Deathbound. Real scary sounding moves, fitting of a pirate, as well as attack buffing moves. He also has electric moves, which is probably there to fill out the team, but there might be more to it. Running into a storm on open waters could spell disaster for a ship. Between the wind and the waves kicked up, it could sink you. So associating a terrifying pirate with a potentially terrifying event like a thunderstorm does make sense. I also want to mention his weakness of wind. In the time before steam power, the wind was both the sailor's best friend and worst enemy. You would rely on it to sail, but if it was too strong, it could damage the ship or blow you off course. If it was too weak, you'd be floating dead in the water. So I think that's pretty fitting. In Q2 and Strikers, it's largely the same, mostly physical and electric moves, although in Q2 he gets All Guard, a defensive move, and in Strikers he gets a passive called Rebel Soul that increases the rate of the Showtime gauge. The defense move is kind of out of place, but Rebel Soul? If that's not meant for a pirate, I don't know what is. Overall, I'd say, pretty good rep for the legendary pirate, only decent for the actual privateer. Thank you very much for watching. Did I leave anything out? Did I get anything wrong? And who should be next? Let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time on Every Persona Explained.